Out of the Dust, Winter 1935. State tests again. Miss Freeland said our grade topped the entire state of Oklahoma on the state test again, 24 points higher than the state average. Wish I could run home and tell Ma and see her nod and hear her say, "I knew you could." It would be enough. January 1935. Christmas dinner without the cranberry sauce. Miss Freeland was my ma at the school Christmas dinner. I thought I'd be the only one without a real ma, but 2 other motherless girls came. We served turkey, chestnut dressing, sweet potatoes, and brown gravy. Made it all ourselves, and it came out pretty good. Better than the Christmas dinner I made for my father at home, where we sat at the table, silent, just the 2 of us. Being there without Ma, without the baby, wouldn't have been so bad if I'd just remembered the cranberry sauce. My father loved Ma's special cranberry sauce, but she never showed me how to make it. January 1935. Driving the cows. Dust piles up like snow across the prairie, dunes leaning against fences, mountains of dust pushing over barns. Joe D. LaFleur can't afford to feed his cows, can't afford to sell them. County Agent Dewey comes, takes the cows behind the barn, and shoots them. Too hard to watch their lungs clogged with dust, like our chickens. Suffocated. Better to let the government take them than suffer the sight of their bony hides sinking down into the earth. Joe D. LaFleur rides the range. Come spring, he'll gather Russian thistle, pulling the plant while it's still green and young before the prickles form, before it breaks free to tumble across the plains. He gathers thistle to feed what's left of his cattle, his bone-thin cattle. Cattle he drives away from the dried-up Beaver River to where the Cimarron still runs, pushing the herd across the breaks, where they might last another week, maybe 2, until it rains. January 1935. First rain. Sunday night, I stretched my legs in my iron bed under the roof. I place a wet cloth over my nose to keep from breathing dust and wipe the grime tracings from around my mouth and shiver thinking of Ma. I am kept company by the sound of my heart drumming. Restless, I tangle in the dusty sheets, sending the sand flying, cursing the grit against my skin, between my teeth, under my lids, swearing I'll leave this forsaken place. I hear the first drops, like the tapping of a stranger at the door of a dream. The rain changes everything. It strokes the roof, streaking the dusty tin, ponging. A concert of rain notes spilling from gutters, gushing through gullies, soaking through the thirsty earth outside. Monday morning dawns, cloaked in mist. I button into my dress, slip on my sweater, and push my way off the porch, sticking my face into the fog, into the moist skin of the fog. The sound of dripping surrounds me as I walk to town. Soaked to my underwear, I can't bear to go through the schoolhouse door. I want only to stand in the rain. Monday afternoon, Joe D. LaFleur brushes mud from his horse. Mr. Kincannon hires my father to pull his olds out of the muck on Route 64. And later, when the clouds lift, the farmers survey their fields, nod their heads as the frail stalks revive. Everyone, everything grateful for this moment, free of the weight of the dust. January 1935. Hayden P. Nye. Hayden P. Nye died this week. I knew him to wave. He liked the way I played piano. The newspaper said when Hayden first came, he could see only grass and the wild horses and wolves roaming. Then folks moved in and sod got busted and bushels of wheat turned the plains to gold. And Hayden P. Nye grabbed the Oklahoma panhandle in his fist and held on. By the time the railroad came in on land, Hayden sold them. The buffalo and the wild horses had gone. Some years, Hayden Nye saw the sun dry up his crop, saw the grasshoppers chew it down. But then came years of rain, and the wheat thrived, and his pockets filled, and his big laugh came easy. They buried Hayden Nye on his land, busted more sod to lay down his bones. Will they sow wheat on his grave where the buffalo once grazed? January 1935. Scrubbing up dust. Walking past the Crystal Hotel, I saw Jim Martin down on his knees. He was scraping up mud that had dried to crust after the rain mixed with dust last Sunday. When I got home, I took a good look at the steps and the porch and the windows. I saw them with Ma's eyes and thought about how she'd been haunting me. I thought about Ma, who would have washed clothes, beaten furniture, aired rugs, scrubbed floors down on her knees, brush in hand, breaking that mud, like the farmers break sod, always watching over her shoulder for the next duster to roll in. My stubborn Ma. She'd be doing it all, with my brother Franklin to tend to. She never could stand a mess. My father doesn't notice the dried mud. At least he never tells me. Nor that he tells me much of anything these days. With Ma gone, if the mud's to be busted, the job falls to me. It isn't the work I hate, the knuckle-breaking work of beating mud out of every blessed thing. But every day my fingers and hands ache so bad, I think I should let them rest. Let them rest. Let the dust rest. Let the world rest. But I can't leave it rest. On the account of Ma haunting. January 1935. Outlined by dust. My father stares at me while I sit across from him at the table, while I wash dishes in the basin, my back to him. The picked and festered bits of my hands in agony. He stares at me as I empty the wash water at the roots of Ma's apple trees. He spends long days digging for the electric train folks when they can use him, and working here nursing along the wheat, what there is of it, or digging the pond. He sings sometimes under his breath, even now, even after such sorrow. After so much sorrow, he sings a man's song, deep with what has happened to us. It doesn't swing lightly, the way Ma's voice did, the way Miss Freeland's voice does, the way Mad Dog sings. My father's voice starts and stops, like a car short on gas, like an engine choked with dust. But then he clears his throat, and the song starts up again. He rubs his eyes the way I do, with his palms out. Ma never did that, and he wipes the milk from his upper lip the same as me, with his thumb and forefinger. Ma never did that either. We don't talk much. My father never was a talker. Ma's dying hasn't changed that. I guess he gets the sound out of him with the songs he sings. I can't help thinking how it is for him without Ma, waking up alone, only his shape left in the bed, outlined by dust. He always smelled a little like her first thing in the morning when he left her in bed and went out to do the milking. She scuffed into the kitchen a few minutes later, bleary-eyed, to start breakfast. I don't think she was ever really meant for farm life. I think once she had bigger dreams, but she made herself over to fit my father. Now he smells of dust and coffee, tobacco and cows. None of the musky women smell left. That was Ma. He stares at me. Maybe he is looking for Ma. He won't find her. I look like him. I stand like him. I walk across the kitchen floor with the long-legged walk of his. I can't make myself over the way Ma did. And yet, if I could look in the mirror and see her in my face, if I could somehow know that Ma and baby Franklin live on in me. But it can't be. I'm my father's daughter. January 1935. The President's Ball. All across the land, couples dancing, arm in arm, hand in hand at the birthday ball. My father puts on his best overalls. I wear my Sunday dress, the one with the white collar, and we walk to town to the Legion Hall to join the dance. Our feet flying, me and my father, on the wooden floor whirling, to Arlie Wonderdale and the Black Mesa Boys. Till 10, when Arlie stands up from the piano to announce we raised $33 for infantile paralysis, a little better than last year. And I remembered last year when Ma was alive and we were very excited about the baby coming. And I played at the same party for Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joyce City and Arlie. Tonight, for a little while, in the bright hall, folks were almost free of dust, almost free of debt, almost free of fields that withered wheat. Most of the night, I think I smiled, and twice my father laughed. Imagine. January 1935. Lunch. No one's going hungry at school today. The government sent canned meat. Rice, potatoes, the bakery sent loaves of bread, and Scotty Moore, George Knoll, and Willie Harkins brought in milk, fresh creamy milk, straight from their farms. Real lunch, and then stomachs full and feeling fine for classes in the afternoon. The little ones drank themselves into white mustaches. They ate and ate until, pushing back from their desk, their stomachs round, they swore they'd never eat again. The older girls, Elizabeth and Lorraine, helped Miss Freeland cook, and Hilary and I, we served and washed, our ears ringing with the sound of satisfied children. February 1935. Guests. In our classroom this morning, we came in to find a family no one knew. They were shy, a little frightened, embarrassed, a man and his wife, pretty far along with the baby coming. A baby coming. 2 little kids and a grandma. They moved into our classroom during the night, an iron bed and some pasteboard boxes. That's all they had. They cleaned the room first and arranged it, making a private place for themselves. I'm on the look for a job, the man said. The dust blew so mean last night. I thought to shelter my family here a while. The 2 little kids turned their big eyes to Mrs. Freeman, from Mrs. Freeman, back to their father. I can't have my wife sleeping in the cold truck, not now, not with the baby coming soon. Miss Freeland said they could stay as long as they wanted. February 1935. Family school. Every day we bring fixins for soup and put a big pot on to simmer. We share it at lunch with our guests, the family of migrants who have moved out from the dust and depression and moved into our classroom. We are careful to take only so much to eat, making sure there's enough soup left in the pot for their supper. Some of us bring in toys and clothes for the children. I found a few things of my brother's and brought them to school. Little feed sack nighties, so small, so full of hope. Franklin never wore one of the nighties Mom made him, except the one we buried him in. The man, Buddy Williams, helps out around the school, fixing windows and doors, and the bad spot on the steps, cleaning up the schoolyard, so it never looked so good. The grandma takes care of the children, bringing them out when the dust isn't blowing, letting them chase tumbleweeds across the fields behind the school. But when the dust blows, the family sits in their little apartment inside our classroom, studying Mrs. Freeland's lessons right alongside us. February 1935. Birth. One morning when I arrived at school, Mrs. Freeman says to keep the kids out, that the baby is coming, and no one can enter the building until the birthing is done. I think about Ma and how that birth went. I keep the kids out and listen behind me, praying for the sound of a baby crying into this world and not the silence my brother brought with him. And then the cry comes, and I have to go away for a little while and just walk off the feelings. Miss Freeland rings the bell to call us in, but I'm not ready to come back yet. When I do come, I study how fine the baby girl is, how perfect, and that she is wearing a feed sack nightgown that was my brother's. February 1935. Time to go. They left a couple weeks after the baby came, all of them crammed inside the rusty old truck. I ran half a mile in their dust to catch them. I didn't want to let that baby go. Wait for me, I cried, choking on the cloud that rose behind them, but they didn't hear me. They were heading west, and no one was looking back. February 1935. Something sweet from moonshine. Ashby Derwin and his pal Rush had themselves a fine operation on the Cimarron River, where the water still runs a little, though the fish are mostly dead from the dust flowing on the surface. Ashby and Rush were cooking up moonshine in their giant metal still on the bank when Sheriff Robertson caught them. They found jugs of finished whiskey and barrels of mash. He found 2 sacks of rye, and he found sugar, 1,000 pounds of sugar. The government men took Ashby and Rush off to Enid for breaking the law, but Sheriff Robertson stayed behind, took apart the still, washed away the whiskey and the mash, and thought about the sugar. All that sugar, 1/2 ton of sugar. Sheriff decided some should find its way into the mouths of us kids. Bake for them, Miss Freeland, he said. Bake them cakes and cookies and pies. Cook them custard and cobbler and crisp, and make them candy and taffy and apple pendouty. Apple pendouty? These kids, Sheriff Robertson said, ought to have something sweet to wash down their dusty milk. And so we did. February 1935. Dreams. Each day after class lets out, each morning before it begins, I sit at the school piano and make my hands work. In spite of the pain, in spite of the stiffness and scars, I make my hands play piano. I have practiced my best piece over and over till my arms throb. Because Thursday night, the Palace Theater is having a contest. Any man, woman, or child who sings, dances, reads, or plays worth a lick can climb onto that stage. Just register by 4 p.m. and give them a taste of what you can do, and you're in, performing for the crowd, warming up the audience for Hazel Herd players. I figure if I practice enough, I won't shame myself. And we sure could use the extra cash if I won $3 first prize, $2 second, $1 third. But I don't know if I could win anything, not anymore. It's the playing I want most, the proving I can still do it without Arlie making excuses. I have a hunger for more than food. I have a hunger bigger than Joyce City. I want tongues to tie and eyes to shine at me like they do at Mad Dog Craddock. Of course, they never will. Not with my hands all scarred up, looking like the earth itself, all parched and rough and cracking. But if I play right enough, maybe they will see past my hands. Maybe they could feel at ease with me again, and maybe then I could feel at ease with myself. February 1935. The competition. I suppose everyone in Joyce City and beyond, all the way to Felton, Keys, and even Guyman, came to watch the talent show at the Palace Thursday night. Backstage, we were 17 amateur acts, our wild hearts pounding, our lips sticking to our teeth, our urge to empty ourselves top and bottom, made a sorry sight in front of the famous Hazel Herd players. But they were kind to us, helped us with our makeup and our hair, showed us where to stand, how to bow, and the quickest route to the toilet. The audience hummed on the other side of the closed curtain. Ivy Huxford kept peeking out and giving reports of who was there and how she never saw so many seats filled in the palace, and that she didn't think they could squeeze a rattlesnake into the back even if he paid full price, the place was so packed. My father told me he'd come once chores were done. I guess he did. The Grover boys let us off. They worked a charm. Baby on the sax, Jake on the banjo, and Ben on the clarinet. The Baker family followed, playing just like they do at home every night after dinner. They didn't look nervous at all. The tap dancers, they rattled the teeth in their jaws and the eyeballs in their skulls, their feet flying, their arms swinging, their mouths gaping. Then Sunny Lee Halem tumbled and leaped onto stage, and sweat flying off her, spotting the palace floor. Marsh Warrenton struggled out, his accordion leading the way. George and Agnes Harkins ran their fingers over the strings on their harps. Made you want to look up to the heavens for angels, but only scenery and lights and ropes and sandbags hung overhead. And then there was me on piano. I went on somewhere near the backside of middle, getting more and more jittery with every act, till my time came. I played Bye Bye Blackbird my own way, messing up the tempo, and the first part sounded like I'd used my elbows, but just the middle sounded good, and the end. I forgot I was even playing in front of the packed Palace Theater. I dropped right inside the music and didn't feel anything till after, when their clapping started, and then I noticed my hands hurting straight up to my shoulders. But the applause made me forget the pain, and the audience roared when I finished. They came to their feet, and I got third prize, $1, while Mad Dog Craddock singing 1 second, and Ben Grover and his crazy clarinet took first. The tap dancers pouted into their mirrors, peeling off their makeup and their smiles. Bertie Jasper claimed it was all my fault she didn't win, that the judges were just being nice to a cripple, and that Harpin Harkins were kind, and the Hazel Herd players wrapped their long arms around me, and I said I was swell. And in the sweaty, dim chaos backstage, I ignored the pain running up and down my arms. I felt like I was a part of something grand, but they had to give my ribbon and my dollar to my father because I couldn't hold anything in my hands. February 1935.